Penguin Random House Audio presents The Empathy Diaries, a memoir by Sherry Turkle, read for you by Jill Larson. To Rebecca and Ben, The Future. Introduction. Le nom du père. During the long hours of my grandmother's dying, I begin to read the Brooklyn telephone book. I look up the Charles Zimmermans. There are pages of them. I study the entries carefully. It's August 1975. I'm 27. For as long as I can remember, I've been both searching and not searching for Charles Zimmerman, my father, whom I haven't seen since childhood. Now I'm searching. In the back of one of my graduate school notebooks, I begin to copy down Charles Zimmerman addresses and telephone numbers, long lists of them. My mother is dead, and my grandparents, with whom I stay when I'm in New York, have only the Brooklyn telephone book, no Manhattan directory. I know that in Cambridge, Massachusetts, one of my Harvard professors has the Manhattan directory in his office. He once commented that everyone needs to have that directory at hand. At the time, this idea suggested a life of access and sophistication that thrilled me. Now, though, I feel a more practical need. When I get back to school, I ask his secretary if I may borrow his Manhattan book. She says no, but she lets me sit with it in his office, where I carefully copy out new Zimmerman candidates. My grandmother dies in December. At LaGuardia Airport, flying back to Boston after her funeral, my plane is delayed. Standing next to a payphone, I study the Queen's directory and copy down the information for all its Charles Zimmermans. It never occurs to me that my father might live in the Bronx or have moved out of New York City altogether. Nearly 3 years later, at a picnic table in Ipswich, Massachusetts, I tell my Aunt Mildred, my mother's sister, that I want to find Charlie, as he was known on the rare occasions when my family spoke of him. Can she help me? Both during my mother's life and long afterward, Mildred, my grandparents, and I had respected my mother's wish to keep secret what she considered the great shame of her early divorce. We never spoke of my biological father. More than this, from the time I was 5 and my mother remarried, this was to Milton Turkle, my family lived under a regime of pretend. The rules were that although my legal name was Sherry Zimmerman, I had to say that my name was Sherry Turkle. Mildred's struggle over what to say is visible, painful to watch. She promised my mother, before she died, to keep me away from my father. Finally, Mildred comes to a decision. If you're going to do it, if you are decided, I should help you, she says. Charlie once worked as a teacher. Many years after your mother's divorce, I met someone who said that he worked as a teacher. With that, Mildred stares down at her feet. I feel my aunt's love. She has given me what she can. I met with a private investigator, a former police detective. I no longer remember his name, just his thin black hair and shiny gray suit. In the spring of 1979, I visited his small, bare office on the West Side, furnished with only a well-used lamp, a coat tree, and a steel desk. Sitting across from me, he traced out on a clean sheet of paper the meager details I knew about my father, his name, that he and my mother were divorced in Florida in the early 1950s, that he might be named in my adoption proceedings beginning in the late 1950s, and the precious detail added by my aunt. He had worked as a teacher in the New York City public school system. After Thanksgiving, the detective called. He'd found a Charles Zimmerman who once taught school in Queens, he said. This former teacher is my father's age. There's also a record of a Zimmerman divorce in Branford, Florida in 1951. The man's birth date matches that of the teacher in Queens. I remember that as we spoke, I could only take shallow breaths. I was crossing a line. My mother had not wanted me to do this, and perhaps she'd had her reasons. I wrote a letter. My husband, Seymour Papert, helped me. We rewrote it many times. The final version left Charlie a lot of room to turn me down. Dear Mr. Zimmerman, I am Sherry Turkle, the daughter of Harriet Bonowitz and Charles Zimmerman, born on June 18, 1948. I was adopted by Milton Turkle, my mother's second husband, and thus carry his name. I have reason to believe that you are my father. I have not been in contact with my father for many years. If you are my father, I would like to meet with you and renew our acquaintance. Please be in touch in whatever way you find most comfortable. Thank you. Sincerely, Sherry Turkle, 44 Tappan Street, Brookline, Massachusetts, 617-267-XXXX. Some days later, the phone rang. Seymour answered. He reached for me, slung his arm around my shoulder. He kissed me on the forehead as he passed me the phone. Hello, is this Sherry Turkle? The same voice asked if I had recently written to a Charles Zimmerman in Queens. Yes, I say. This is your father. I haven't spoken to Charlie in almost 19 years. I saw him intermittently as a child, and then after Milton Turkle adopted me, I never heard from him again. Now he wants to see me. I grab a calendar. He gives me an address. We set a date for the following December weekend, just before Christmas. Charlie answered the door. He looked like me. That's what I noticed first. The eyes, the mouth. I have his ears. His first words to me, right there at the door, "Did you find me through the New York Times?" When I said, "No, I hired a detective," he seemed disappointed. For a moment I imagined, almost giddy, that he'd been advertising for a lost daughter. My father turned out to be a rogue scientist. Now a retired high school teacher, for decades he had worked out of his home and had written a book in which he claimed to disprove Einstein's theory of relativity. Relentlessly, he then wrote to famous scientists, trying to get them to take his work seriously. He also advertised his self-published Einstein book in the back pages of the New York Times Book Review. E equals MC squared is not correct. Queens high school teacher disproves Einstein. For more information, write Charles Zimmerman. He provided a post office box number. This is the advertisement my father thought had led me to him. His Einstein disproof is displayed on a table in the living room. It is small and dark and blue. After such a long time of knowing nothing about him, it was good to find out that Charlie was alive, healthy, and not homeless. The apartment where we met reminded me pleasantly of my grandparents' Brooklyn home. Here, as there, an upholstered sofa and chairs were covered in plastic. There was a dining room set in a wood that looked so shiny that it could not possibly be real. It was some kind of space-age cherry. Charlie explained that this was the home of his woman friend, Lila. She'd been standing shyly behind him ever since he greeted me at the door, and now he introduced me. Lila is petite and pretty. I think of my mother, tall and imposing, feminine and sociable. Charlie likes the company of women. Women like Charlie's company. Lila encouraged us to sit down at the table where food was already spread out. She said how happy she is that this day has come, that she has encouraged it often. For lunch, Charlie told me that I will have the traditional bagels, lox, cream cheese babka. He will have a kale shake. I knew he was a vegetarian because it was the first thing he mentioned after showing me his New York Times advertisement. A childhood memory came back to me, drinking a cantaloupe malted with him in Prospect Park. As a child, Among the few
Sample complete. Ready to continue?